It's Harsanyi Time, everybody. Our friend David Harsanyi from National Review in the mix now with all the biggest, most important stories of the week, or at least the ones that he most wants to talk to us about. David, great to have you back.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
So I had to laugh this week. We had Steve Schmidt, who I am not shy about criticizing for his absurd commentary on the show on a regular basis. I do think maybe offers up, I don't know if he is the dumbest political commentator, but offers up some of the dumbest political commentary you could find anywhere, and has been doing this for the amusement of Democrats for years. Former Republican GOP strategist or whatever. Now it comes out that he and other people from the Lincoln Project are Democrats. I mean, they're formally joining the Democrat Party. I remember when I was saying that these people are called Democrats 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, whenever, even before they had the Lincoln Project. And they were saying, oh, no, they're the real conservatives. Turns out not so much, David.
No, and Steve Schmidt is especially noxious. Like, the things he says are especially dishonest and misleading and nasty. But he's not a very bright guy. And he's always, once you start going after senators like Collins in Maine or other moderate Republicans, you're no longer anti-Trump. You're just a Democrat, which was always my problem with the Lincoln Project. You want to go out there and campaign for Democrats, that's fine. But if you want to be on CNN and other stations pretending you're a Republican who's just so hurt by the mean things that Donald Trump says, you're misleading the public, right? And it's a scam and a con. And that's, of course, what those guys are running over there. So I don't really understand why he couldn't. It's weird that he had to tell everyone he's going to be a Democrat when he could have just continued that con. I guess that because they had such little effect on the election, they're going to try something new. I don't know. But yeah, it's such a joke.
It seems to me like there's going to be a whole lot of former conservative or whatever they call themselves, GOP strategists at CNN and MSNBC who only have they've only got two options: become Democrats or no longer be on TV and pushing this nonsense. Because if you're looking for overrepresentation of a set of political beliefs, the people who claim to be so much the real Republicans during the Trump presidency, who are on TV all the time. You had Nicole Wallace from the Bush administration, Steve Schmidt. I can't even think of all of them off the top of my head right now, but all these former, so-called former Republicans who, what's his name? Rick Wilson. These people were so GOP. So what happens now? I guess the con can't continue, can it?
No, it's like there's always going to be an industry of former Republicans who just can't take it. This is not something new. It's gone back. It was happening during the Bush years as well. People who just simply could not, where has the Republican Party gone? It's terrible. 4 years from now, people are going to be saying, at least Trump did X and Y. This is even worse. It's always the way. These guys were especially terrible because they didn't only attack Trump. And I'm fine with going after politicians. They mocked conservatives, they mocked conservative beliefs, but they do it under the title of a former Republican, the real conservatives. And that's what just annoys me so much, because it's no longer an ideological argument. It's just about personalities, and these people are just on TV so that they can make liberals feel good about themselves as they sort of demean conservatives. And it's also the problem with that is that you have networks that are putting these folks up for that very reason. They don't want to have real debates. They want to have how many conservatives are really on CNN, let's say? I don't really watch it, but
now none. But now the answer is none. It doesn't exist anymore. But go ahead.
I know that I don't want to insult. I know that we both know S.E. Cupp, right? I think we both worked with her at the same time. But she's out there ripping the Second Amendment, saying, she's just basically just a liberal who still calls herself, I guess, a conservative. And that's just misleading. I just think we deserve, or viewers deserve, a better debate, or maybe we don't deserve it. I don't know. But that, it's still dishonest.
I feel like there's no debate allowed at these places anymore. In fact, I think there are very few places in the media in general where there's any effort to allow a real airing of ideas. And I think it's because a lot of it is driven by audiences. I will say that it's true. It's very true on the left. It's even a little bit true on the right. you'll have, if there's an exchange of ideas that doesn't result in someone saying, in someone effectively, clearly trouncing and sort of belittling the other person, you have a lot of people who are just disinterested in that now. I mean, they don't even really want to hear the exchange. Not everybody, but that's very common. And I think that's what the media ecosystems that exist right now have done. And it's a shame. And it's much more pervasive on the left than it is on the right, but I do see it in both places. And I feel like we understand the real crux of a lot of these arguments as the American people less than we otherwise would, because everyone's just kind of protecting their brand now. No one actually wants to get into it.
I think that's right. And you see people threatening to cancel their New York Times headlines when someone writes, their subscriptions when someone writes a headline they don't like or covers a story they don't like. And obviously, I get a lot of mail about, National Review has this writer or that writer. Like, it's hard for people to understand that you can have more than one opinion. Or when people attack a publication, they say, the National Review says this or the National Review says that, when it's a columnist. It happened at the Federalist as well. It's hard for people to understand that you're going to have a lot of different opinions and debate, which I think is healthy. I think you're right. I just think a lot of audiences just no longer want to hear it anymore. And I hate to sound, this will sound biased, but conservatives probably are that way because they're so sick of these big institutions being so biased that they don't want to, in their view, they're like, we don't need this debate here when we constantly hear it elsewhere. So I get that part of it, but it's just unhealthy.
I agree. And I also think conservatives are so sick of the fake version of these debates that, I mean, it's kind of like the West Wing effect, from the TV show by Aaron Sorkin, The West Wing. It's like, the Democrats just have all these snappy comebacks and are just so wonderful and like good looking and smart, and the Republicans are always like, I just love Jesus and I hate women, and it's like that's what you get on the West Wing, as those are all Republicans, right? They're a bunch of Bible thumping, anti-women, kind of maybe racist, and all the arguments kind of boil down to that. You're like, oh, okay, I guess that's the way it really is.
Sometimes they see the light, right, and come over to the right side, and they see it the right way.
Yeah, and they have some really sort of saccharine violin music in the background as the conservative, they play the clarinets in the background as the conservative goes, wow, you're right. I never really thought of it that way,
They find their heart and their humanity and vote with. It's a funny thing. It's just a little off topic, because when people tell you to stop being partisan, they just mean stop being Republican. It's never, the other way that they mean it. Stop being a partisan and just embrace gun rights, gun restrictions, or stop being a partisan and do this and that. Yeah. I mean, we hit this up quite often, but it's sort of an institutional problem now. And I'm not sure what can be done about it with these fake I used to work with Tom Nichols. He's a fine guy, I guess, and all that, but he's never really been a conservative. There's what views of his are actually conservative. I don't know. And yet he's on there pretending to be this, erstwhile Republican who has, seen the light and is fighting against evil with it in his own party, but he's never been a conservative. So it's just dishonest.
We're speaking to David Harsanyi of National Review. And David, speaking of the lack of honesty in public conversations, I got to say this. So Pete Buttigieg is now supposed to be the incoming Biden administration transportation secretary. And some of the articles, some of the stuff on this have honestly been hilarious already. Pete, here's from NPR. Pete Buttigieg, President-elect Biden's pick for transportation secretary, said, quote, he has a personal love of transportation, recounting train trips on Amtrak while in college, and said he proposed to his new husband, Chasen, in an airport terminal. Oh, well, this is a step away from, I'm not a doctor, but I stayed at a Marriott Express last night or whatever, a Holiday Inn Express, whatever it is. And the media is actually doing this. Pete Buttigieg liked trains in college, so he should be the transportation secretary.
It's amazing when you compare it to what happened with Betsy DeVos or, anyone actually in the Trump administration. Pete actually, Mayor Pete, it's like a thermonuclear cliche generator. He says stuff like, and I'm making this up, but it's probably pretty close, we don't build roads, the roads build us, that kind of thing. And he's perfect for the job where little is done and it doesn't really matter. So, I mean, I met Ray LaHood when he was Obama's transportation secretary, and he was one of the most ridiculous people I've ever met in person. And I wouldn't let him run anything either. So I think this is a pretty good spot for Pete.
Yeah, and I guess you're going to see a lot more of this, though. And I remember when, say what you will about his foreign policy in action, but the CEO of ExxonMobil, which until recently was the largest and wealthiest corporation in the world. I mean, the most valuable, I should say, corporation in the world. Rex Tillerson had that job, and when they were going to make him Secretary of State, they acted like Trump had picked some like inebriated fool off the beach somewhere that he thought was funny to make. It's just, there's no, the media has so little in terms of standards and principles they apply now, political journalism, if we want to be more specific about it, David, that you just feel like they don't care anymore. They don't know. I mean, how is this possible? The double standards to be this blatant.
Well, I don't know about that part, but I do know that it's funny when you think about how they would talk about Trump as this person who was completely unprepared for the job. But yet Obama, who literally, I cannot tell you what he did other than run for president, essentially for about 8 years before he became president. I don't even know what he did before then. I know he's a community organizer. I don't even know what that means. He never ran anything, but he's treated as someone who is like incredibly proficient at everything and knowledgeable and ready to run a giant biggest organization in the world, essentially, where Donald Trump actually has ran pretty big businesses, et cetera. But so there's always going to be this double standard. And Mayor Pete's just part of it. Even though it's funny.
I got to ask you, because I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this sooner. Not Betsy DeVos, the wife of Jill Biden. Sorry, I was blanking on her name for a second. Jill Biden. Where do you come down on the Dr. Biden controversy?
Well, I've noted on numerous occasions that the only people I call doctor are people who can prescribe me morphine and Dr. J. Those are the two. I've been persuaded to maybe I'm not Dr. J. I've been persuaded to maybe call Dr. Dre a doctor. But Kyle Smith, who writes at the National Review, wrote a scathing column and read her dissertation, which is just complete garbage. I would say that I don't call people doctors who aren't medical doctors. I find it pretentious. I think it grates against the egalitarianism of American life for someone to demand that you call them by their credentials. And I think it's kind of laughable considering what she's a doctor. And no offense to others who have been lucky enough to be able to go to school long enough to get that degree.
David Harsanyi of National Review. Check out his latest at nationalreview.com. David, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.